So I'm just going to start with a few announcements before we go into our Dharma talk and sit today. You're joining us today on our regular Sunday sit, 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. We meet on Zoom, and on the third Sundays, we also meet in person at the UUCOD facility in Rancho Mirage that we are renting out right now. That's only on the third Sundays, but you can always join us on Zoom. On Tuesdays, we have our Meditation as Refuge group that meets on Zoom, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Valerie Couson will be leading this next one. Wednesdays, we have our Just Sit peer-led silent meditation group on Zoom, 5:30 p.m. to 6:15 p.m. And on Friday, we have our loving kindness meditation. That's our meta group that meets on Zoom every Friday, 4:30 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. Valerie Couson is also going to be leading this next one on Friday. On the first Saturday of the month, this next one being on the 5th, we also have our meditation for everyone. That's our beginning intro meditation course that goes over the basics for new beginners and old beginners alike. That's going to be a suggested $20 for that class. It's a 45-minute class on 10 a.m. on the first Saturday of every month. And with that, and I am going to be posting a couple links into the chat so that you can support the teacher, so you can support the organization, whether that be financial support, your time and skill, labor, that's always appreciated very much. And of course, your presence as well. With that, Mary, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. It's good to see you. It's good to see everyone. Happy Sunday afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. I'm loving the cool fall weather, and I hope it's pleasant where you are. So we're going to do, as usual, a meditation to start, and then we'll move into the Dharma talk. We're continuing the Eightfold Path today. I'll be talking about wise action, but first we'll move into practice. And we'll sit for about 40 minutes. I'll offer some light guidance. And what I do a daily meditation group. And this last week, I've been really bringing us back to the simplicity of the practice, not necessarily easy, but simple. The invitation of the first foundation of mindfulness to rest with the breath, to rest with the body, to just be present, using that as an anchor, and also the invitation to gentleness, to friendliness. And so that, I think, is it's never inappropriate. And so that's what I want to offer this afternoon as we sit together, this invitation to just let go and be with gentleness and kindness. So let's sit, finding your way to your posture, to your seat. Whether you're sitting or standing or laying down, let yourself find what's working for you this afternoon. Let yourself settle in. Maybe taking a moment or two to release any tension, to stretch a little bit. And land where you are. Give the mind permission to let go of the thoughts, let go of the agenda, releasing any expectations or shoulds. Trusting that all those to-do lists will still be there when we're done with the practice. So give yourself the gift of just resting right here. So as you allow the mind to relax and let go, also letting the body let go, moving into a gentle releasing of any tightness or tension, releasing contraction, softening, maybe starting around the head and the the face, the jaw, letting those shoulders release, relax, letting the arms rest on your lap or your legs. Releasing, relaxing the torso, back. Let yourself be supported by the seat beneath you. As you move into this stillness, this supported rest, remembering there's no place to go, there's nothing to do. Let yourself relax in body, perhaps aware of the breath as the body breathes, the gentle rhythm of the inhale and the exhale. There's no need to control, there's simply the experience of the breath, the experience of the body. Spend these next few moments settling in, letting go, relaxing to the stillness that's here. Opening an awareness to what's present. Be aware of the energies in the body, the different sensations. Open to the other senses, the sounds and the smells and the sights, the thoughts, but also recognizing there's no need to engage. You can let them drift by as you rest in this gentle awareness. You'll undoubtedly drift away, be caught up in thinking about something in the future or the past, some idea. As you know, the practice is to release when you've noticed you've become stuck. Release that thought, getting back into present time awareness, letting yourself be right here. Remembering also the quality of kindness in this practice. So easy to drift into judgment. There's no doing this wrong or right. It's simply a practice of letting go of those habits of mind, which can be so strong, so challenging. We have the perseverance to make the effort again and again to return. As many times as you may drift away, you can also return. breath and the body are open to the present. Perhaps something else is helpful, such as a sound. Let yourself rest right here. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Letting yourself drop below the stories of the mind, present for what's here, the sounds, the physical sensations, the thoughts, letting them be, judgment, pushing or pulling, just resting in the now. Mind is restless, acknowledging the restlessness. Mind is calm, acknowledging the calm. Allow yourself to be with the way it is. The invitation of the practice is to greet the moment, greet the reality of right here and right now, the way it is. To be with that, resting steady on your seat. Relaxed in body, relaxed in mind, resting on your foundation, steady and alert. Everything falls to the background. Bring the gentleness that's part of this practice, kindness to the experience. It's difficult, challenging, letting there be some compassion. It's not about achieving anything. It's about being kind and present. We are moving now into the last few moments of our sit. I would like to invite you to move into a gratitude practice, if you like, for these last few moments, bringing to mind something in your life you're grateful for and resting in that gratitude. Thank you, everyone. Questions or comments or thoughts about the instructions or your experience? So thank you everyone for being here. Unless there was no other questions, right? Okay. So thanks everyone for being here. I'm happy to see you all. I think you probably know that we are in the middle of going through the Eightfold Path. Kicked it off a few weeks ago. I know Ian gave the overview, and then I did Wise View, and I know last week Tenshin did. He did. I think it might have been Joe Kai who did Wise Intention. I can't remember. And then that was the first part of the Eightfold Path, and then the second part of the Eightfold Path is Sila, the ethical practice part of it, which is so important. It's how we are in the world, how we move through the world in wise relationship with others. And as I said last week, Tenshin talked about wise speech, and this week I want to talk about wise action. And wise action together with wise speech make up the basic, the 5 precepts that are part of the Theravadan tradition, along with the 5th one, which is not in the Eightfold Path, is not taking intoxicants which lead to heedlessness, and being careful about what we consume so that we don't get knocked off our mindfulness. And so it's what wise action are 3 things included in it. Not intentionally taking a life, not taking what's not freely offered, and being wise with our sexuality. And, the Dhammapada talks about this kind of moving through the world as avoiding what's unskillful, doing what's good, and purifying the mind, which is great. But the Eightfold Path kind of gives us a way to do that, a way to avoid what's unskillful and do what's good. And purifying the mind just means, burning off those old habits that may not be very helpful or skillful or beneficial. Those ways of viewing the world that are perhaps a little bit off, are conditioned by things that may not be wise or helpful. And I think, especially right now, probably all so much hatred, there's so much violence, there's so much vitriol, that it's so important to be explicit in our commitment to wise action, and it's to have something to commit to. That's what this path is. When we commit, at least I know I commit, and the invitation is to commit to this, because Fourth Noble Truth says it's a way out of suffering. We're caught up in suffering, but there's a way out, and that way is the Eightfold Path. And so I want to commit to this path as a way to move away from suffering, move away from discomfort, dissatisfaction, my inability to be with the way things are, and move towards a path of wisdom and freedom, towards freedom and liberation. It's a lane to stay in, and a voice to use. I gave a talk, I think a couple of years ago, called Standing Firm in the Dharma. Standing firm in the Dharma, and what it does, these teachings are a foundation to stand firm in. And so, this teaching, these factors of the path enable us to be in the world that eases suffering and invites us to examine our own actions. How do we show up? It's for our own freedom and for the liberation of all beings. That's why we do this. We don't just do it for ourselves. It's not this rugged individualism. I got mine, you get yours. No, we're doing this together. To a extent, we are in community with the rest of the world. So how do we show up without causing harm to ourselves or to others? And in fact, there's a line from one of the suttas that says, the person practicing both for his own welfare and for the welfare of others is the foremost, the best, the preeminent, the supreme, and the finest. So basically, it's a good thing to do this. It's like you're the preeminent, supreme, and the finest. It's like it's what we want to do. So to get into the different particulars of this, the first one, and I'm going to read from Bhikkhu Bodhi, who has the book, The Noble Eightfold Path. It's pretty much a classic. It's very thin, but it's pretty chock full. And he has translated the suttas and what they write about this. And for this one, for not intentionally taking a life, herein someone avoids the taking of life and abstains from it, without stick or sword, conscientious, full of sympathy, he is desirous of the welfare of all sentient beings. So even in this teaching, in the Eightfold Path, it says not only do we not take a life, but we are desirous of the welfare of all beings. And the one line in here that struck me, I remember the first time I read it, says, it just is like, oh yeah, it gets me out of me, because so much of our harm, the harm we do is caused, and the harm in the world is driven by the defilements, the poisons, the enough. So greed just keeps feeding itself. So you want more and more and more. Or hatred, hatred of what's different, hatred of people who have more, just aversion, hatred out of fear. I was at an event last week. I'm on the board of a nonprofit, and we had our annual celebration of people who've done wonderful things. And the man who gave the keynote said that power without love is fear. And that was a line that really struck me. So people who do not have this love underpinning, my understanding of it is this love, this being desirous of the welfare for all, moves into a place of fear, because I might lose what I have. So there's this fear, and we see it everywhere today. There's this stoking of fear of they're going to come and take what you have. So you need to make sure that they don't do it, whatever it is. Whatever it is, it's the fires are being fanned so much these days. And so this principle, this first idea of not taking a life, it's grounded in the consideration that all beings love life and fear death, that all seek happiness and are averse to pain. All of them. So I am, and everyone is. So it puts us all on an equal footing. And so if we're on an equal footing, the invitation is to treat others with the two kinds of action that we're asked to not do, not killing, but also there's the abstinence that applies to the destruction of life, and the second one is deliberately harming or torturing another human being or another being without killing it. So it's not just killing, because I'm sure most of us in this little Zoom mosaic do not make a habit of killing others, but we do cause harm. We do hurt others. We don't torture others intentionally when we think of torture, like tying people up and waterboarding and those types of things. But how do we treat others? How do we cause harm? Do we? By our actions, by our thoughts, by our deeds. And again, this whole part of the Eightfold Path. Sila invites us to investigate our actions in all these ways, in speech, in action. And I'll touch on a couple more as I move forward. But really recognizing how we don't cause harm. And then the other side of this, which I love about Buddhist teachings, is that it's not just thou shalt not. There's the counterpart to it. And the counterpart to this, the disciple not only avoids destroying life, he dwells with a heart full of sympathy, desiring the welfare of all beings. We desire the welfare of all beings. We work towards the liberation of all. So important. It's so important. So we cultivate kindness. We cultivate compassion. Mindfulness is another factor in the path, and mindfulness runs throughout all of this. We have to pay attention. We have to be aware when we sit and meditate. That's real fine tuning of mindfulness and awareness of what's happening, not what I think is happening, not what I want to happen, not what happened yesterday, but what's the experience in the moment? What emotion is present? What sensations are right here? And that's how we, that is so necessary for not causing harm. I think I read somewhere or heard somewhere, someone said, if you are truly mindful, you will be incapable of causing harm because you will understand the impact it has. And you will not want to do that. All the harm I've caused, I think probably most of the harm I've caused is because I wasn't paying attention or I was caught in greed. Mostly greed for me, not so much aversion or anger or hatred, but I need to make sure I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. So grasping, and doing all these things to take care of me. So mindfulness is incredibly important. But when we sit and we actually do the practice of meditation, it has a beneficial impact on the brain, which fires up the empathy, the compassion, both for ourselves and for our others. So these factors are tied in with each other in so many ways. It's really extraordinary. It's really important. So that's the first piece of wise action, not to kill and to cultivate compassion. The second one is to not take what's not freely given. And in this piece, the Buddha talks about stealing and robbery and fraudulence and deceitfulness. Yeah, the person avoids taking what is not given and abstains from it. Yeah, wherever it is, whatever another person possesses, he does not take away with thievish intent. So obviously it's the cash register honesty, it's the not stealing money, it's the not taking of goods, it's obviously not breaking into other people's houses or robbing them at gunpoint. Again, I don't think anyone in this Zoom room is probably doing that or does that regularly. But what else do we take that's not offered? Again, it's the invitation to examine how we move through the world. How are we in relationship with other people? Do we take time? Do we hold people hostage? You ever be in a conversation with someone who is just talking and has absolutely no awareness of you even being there? You know, I have some people in my life that I could talk to them for 20 minutes and then I'll be done and they will not even have asked, how are you? Because it's like you flip a switch and I like to say they have no off switch. That sucking of time, that sucking of another person's energy, awareness, just taking from another. And so do you do that? Do I do that? You know, um, all those types of things, imposing on people, being in relationships long past the time they should be over with because of, again, fear, not being willing to walk out and say goodbye or let go of something that's not working. So, and manipulation to get your own way, that's kind of a bit of fraudulence. It talks about fraudulence and deceitfulness, cheating. It says false weights and measures, by cheating that. And there's so much of that going on in this world today, predatory lending, that type of thing that causes tremendous stuff, not really being quite truthful in how we say. Again, wise speech overlaps into this as well a little bit, but how do you move through the world? And again, the counterpoint, but before I get there, this is driven again by greed of wanting what we want when we want it and being oblivious. So there's a little bit of delusion in here too. There's oblivious to other people, perhaps oblivious to other people and their needs because we're so caught up in making sure what we have, what we want. So we're taking. The positive counterpoint to that is honesty, is being honest, not stealing, but being honest in how we show up with others. It's also generosity. Generosity is the antidote to clinging, and to cling is to suffer. So to practice letting go. Generosity of time. Do you have a friend who wants to talk? Can you talk to them for a little bit? Listen. Giving the gift of listening, that's an act of generosity, which doesn't often happen these days. Taking somebody to the airport, that's a gift of time. That's an act of generosity. So these teachings, what I think is most beautiful about them, it's not a list of here's what you have to do. It's finding how they make sense in your life. How does this play out in my life? How does being not taking what's not freely offered play out in my life? And this was driven home to me a number of years ago. I was on a retreat at Spirit Rock, and my job was to the teachers, there's a yurt, and the teachers would meet there and have their meals there and talk. And so there was always little snacks down there for them. And my job was to bring the dishes up to the kitchen and make sure their snacks were full and things like that. And one day the cook, I think it was around Halloween, and the cook had a bag of candy, those bags of candy that you see around Halloween. And she said, take this down to the yurt for the teachers. And so it was a bag of the little Snickers or the little Crackle and Hershey's. And I'm like, score! Because I could just put my hand in there and put half of it in my pocket if I wanted to. And then it occurred to me, it's like, oh, this wasn't offered to me. Nobody would know. See, that's the thing. We can rationalize anything. But if we're committed to this way of life, it's like, oh, actually, this was not offered to me. And I can let go of it in this moment. I'm grateful I was on retreat, so that stuff was up and there was an awareness there. So I just brought the candy down and I left it on their counter and went about my business. But it's that type of thing. How does this show up? That was just like a little mini thing, but again, we want to be vigilant. We don't want to fall into that rationalization. Well, this is okay. This is on the scale of things. This is like meh. So just see for yourself how this plays out. It's as with all of these things. As the Buddha said, find your own way with this. What makes sense for you? What takes you away from suffering and towards liberation? And what works for the benefit, not just for you, but for all beings? And now moving into the excuse me, the third one is to abstain from sexual misconduct. And I like to say being wise with our sexuality, because this is a place that can cause so much harm. And again, I'm sure everyone in this mosaic has had some kind of, has been impacted by some kind of relationship that was unwise or unskillful or caused harm. I can say yes to both of those, because I was not aware, because I was ignorant, because I was driven by fear so much of the time. So much of my life, fear was the engine that drove me, but was not aware of it, totally unaware of it, until I really got into this practice and was able to sit and kind of, as it says, purify the mind, disentangle from those wrong points of view, that deep conditioning that impacts all of us. We all have so much in conditioning. And I also want to say that the way this is written, it's very patriarchal, because it's written from the male point of view. It's all about how the male interacts with female. That's kind of how it's written. But really, the important part is to have this as part of the conversation, because it does cause so much harm. And things evolve over time, and realities evolve over time, hopefully. And so we now know that, it's not just about a man and his wives and things, but it's like making sure that the most vulnerable are protected, and that we're not causing harm or breaking commitments. Thich Nhat Hanh, actually, who has written beautifully about all the precepts and expanded them, wrote about this one, and I like it, what he said. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I vow to cultivate responsibility and learn ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, family, and society. To preserve the happiness of myself and others, I am determined to respect my commitments and the commitments of others. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. So it's not saying who's appropriate to be with. There's no rules about this or about that, but it's about protecting people from harm, which is beautiful. Again, it's not about me. It's not about us. It's about the welfare of all. And it has to be done because we see the harm that's being caused every single day, you know? And we see, I'm sure in our own lifetimes, we've seen the shift in what's okay and what's not okay. What used to be just, you know, that's just who they are, or, blaming abuse on the woman or the person who received the abuse. Well, you obviously were asking for it. Still makes my back crawl when I hear those things. But it's very real, and it's very real in a lot of parts of the world right now. If you look at what's happening in Iran, because that's not about religion. A lot of this is about power. So, but using sex as power, and to really pay attention to how we move through the world, and that we're not causing harm. It's incredibly important. And because it can cause, I think because it can cause so much suffering, that's why the Buddha lifted this up, because it's not talked about in so many areas. It's not talked about. And to normalize the conversations about the impact of behaviors. Yeah. Bhikkhu Bodhi talked about the essential purpose of this piece is the essential purpose is to prevent sexual relations which are hurtful to others. Really, really quite simple. And so really how we have to ask about when we're in relation with another person, is this hurtful to others? Is it hurtful to us? Is this causing harm in any way, shape, or form? Really, that's the bottom line. So important. Yeah. And all of these factors of the Eightfold Path, whether they're put into this format or in the precepts, it's really, and I like to think about the precepts is a way to make it safe for others to be around me. If I commit to living this way, then people should feel safe to be around me because I am mindful of my actions. I am committed to living in a way that doesn't cause harm for myself or others. I'm committed to living in a way that's kind and compassionate. So that's kind of what this is. And there was a question, and I'm happy to answer that said, can I explain the difference between the Eightfold Path and the precepts? And um, the Eightfold Path is this teaching of this is how you move through the world. But the precepts are more the ethical behavior piece of it. So the Eightfold Path includes wise views, understanding the Four Noble Truths, understanding the characteristics of existence, of impermanence and non-self and dukkha, and wise intention of living in a way that practices renunciation of those things that cause suffering, and cultivating friendliness and loving kindness and compassion towards those we meet. And then the last piece of the Eightfold Path is about wise effort and mindfulness and concentration or collectedness. So it's the wisdom piece of it, and the concentration. Well, excuse me, the wisdom piece is the first part, and the samadhi or collectedness of mind. So, but the ethical behavior is what formed the precepts. So the precepts are not to intentionally take a life, not to cause harm with our speech, not to take what's not offered, not to cause harm with our sexuality or sexual misconduct, and not to take things which lead to heedlessness. There are more in the Zen tradition. In Theravada, there's the 5 that are for lay people. There are more for monastics. They have a lot more. But it's how to live in the world without causing harm. It's more of a moving through the world type of a invitation. So if that makes sense, and people like take the precepts every day. They say, I vow not to cause harm by taking a life or whatever. So that's kind of repeated on a regular basis. So I hope that explains the difference. But as you can see, so many of the Buddhist teachings overlap and are taught in different ways in different places, depending on who he was talking to, because different people hear things in different ways. And so these teachings are reiterated all kinds of ways throughout the suttas. So we hear it again and again and again and again. And then I taught this last night on my Friday afternoon class yesterday afternoon. And at the end, somebody asked how we avoid self-righteousness if we live this way, which I thought was really a sweet question. And because I can imagine if Buddhists were prone to proselytizing, we could become really unbearable with these, that's not wise speech. In fact, we kind of tend to, with my friends who are practitioners, we joke with each other, you're being a bad Buddhist. You're not being a good Buddhist, those types of things with each other. But we don't proselytize traditionally. Buddhists do not. And it's not about pounding people over the head, but I think it's more about how do I make these teachings how I move through the world. At least for me, that's what it is. This has given me a foundation. It's given me a path, a lane. It's given me a voice. This is what I have committed to. I believe in the value. I believe that this leads to freedom for all beings, or can. And I am willing for me to live in this way. I'm not saying anybody else has to, but I am choosing to live this way. And I think a humility comes from that. Through doing this practice, through the thinking of others as well as ourselves, there's a humility that arises through making compassion an important part of how we live. Kind of takes away that self-righteous tendency. Not saying that people don't get self-righteous, but I think that it doesn't necessarily lead to that. Every individual is different, obviously, but it's not the direction it goes in. So, and mindfulness, helps again to underlay that. Oh, ego, hello. And it's like, oh, maybe I can let that go. So it's a continual vigilance. It's a continual paying attention. Mindfulness is so important to all of this, because if we're not paying attention, that's why there's the fifth precept, not to take things that not to ingest anything that leads to heedlessness, because that's the anti-mindfulness. So, it's the again, the precept says, and this is not about the precepts, but the precept says drugs and alcohol. But Thich Nhat Hanh expanded and said, be careful of what you watch. What do you ingest? What do you eat? What do you listen to? And these days, it's extremely important to pay attention to that, because it's so easy to be just kind of knocked off kilter. So anyway, those are my thoughts on wise action, my friends. And any other questions or thoughts or comments? Well, thank you, my friends, for being here. It's always lovely to be with you. Next week is Wise Livelihood. So that's going to be, I can't remember who's teaching next week. Is it Ian, maybe? I'm not sure, but it's on the website. I will be teaching in London next Sunday, so I'm excited about that. Anyway, I will be back in November. I actually get to come out there in November for the in-person one on the 20th. So again, thank you for your support, both through Donna to support ICD, and if you want to volunteer, I know Adrian can head you or point you in the right direction. We have a few board members here today. I'm sure Rule or Terrence or Jason, if Jason's still there, can help you with that, or I can help you with that. But there's always ways to be involved with this community, which is a beautiful way to practice generosity. So absolutely. And that's all I have. I don't know, Adrian, do you have anything else?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So thank you all for being here, and remembering that we practice not only for our own well-being, but for the well-being of all. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. Thank you, everyone. Much love. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.